All right, ready to dive into the Bitcoin Standard
Let's do it.
by Saifedean Ammous.
Yeah.
Got some seriously thought-provoking stuff to unpack here.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like how this whole Bitcoin thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Might be our insurance policy against a future straight out of an Orwellian novel.
Yeah.
Buckle up, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're going on a journey
Okay.
through the history of money.
All right.
From those giant stone coins to, well, digital gold.
What's really fascinating about this book is that it doesn't just explain Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It connects it to this bigger picture question
Uh-huh.
of what makes good money versus bad money
Right.
and how that shaped civilizations throughout history.
You know, I was blown away by the foreword
Oh, yeah.
by Nassim Nicholas Taleb,
Taleb.
you know, the black swan guy.
Yeah.
He basically says that Bitcoin flips the script
Hmm.
on the whole financial power structure.
Interesting.
The old guard can't just control the money game anymore.
That's a powerful statement.
It is.
And it really sets the stage for the entire book.
Totally.
Ammous dives deep into the history of money,
Yeah.
and you start to see these patterns emerge.
Yeah.
How things become valuable,
Yeah.
how that value gets corrupted,
Yeah.
and what the consequences are for societies.
The book starts with this really simple question.
Okay.
What problem does money actually solve?
Hmm.
We take it for granted.
Yeah, we do.
But imagine, like, trying to trade a pair of shoes for a house.
Right.
Or, like, a bushel of apples for a car.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
It just doesn't work that.
Money solves this problem of scale.
It also solves the problem of time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Some goods, like those apples you mentioned,
Right.
might rot before you can even trade them.
Yeah, for sure.
Money holds its value over time.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about your wealth literally decaying.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And then there's location.
Location, right.
Imagine trying to lug around a cow
Yeah.
to trade for something in another town.
Huh.
Not exactly practical.
Nope.
Money is this portable, universally accepted store of value
Yes.
that makes trade so much easier.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
Not just anything can be good money.
Okay. Right.
Think about those giant stone discs
Uh-huh.
they used on the island of Yap.
Yeah, the rice stones.
Yeah. They were valuable because they were so hard to make.
Yeah.
But when technology made it easier, their value plummeted.
It's like the book says.
Yeah.
Easy money leads to all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
It's this easy money trap, right?
Oh, yeah.
When something's easy to produce, people produce more of it,
Mm-hmm.
driving down its value.
Right.
Anyone who was holding on to it as a store of value ends up losing out.
This is where the concept of saleability comes in.
Okay.
How easily something can be sold
Right.
without losing value.
Yeah.
It's this crucial factor that determines whether something can become money in the first place. Gold, for example, has been a highly saleable asset for centuries.
Makes sense. The book takes us on this fascinating tour
Oh, yeah.
through the history of money.
Cool.
Seashells, beads, salt, cattle,
Wow.
they all had their moment, right?
They did.
But they ultimately failed because their supply could be increased too easily.
And then there's gold and silver,
Right.
which dominated for centuries.
Yeah.
They're scarce, durable, divisible, all the qualities of good money.
Yeah.
The book even argues that the Roman Empire's decline
Oh, wow.
was linked to their debasement of currency.
Okay.
They kept lowering the silver content in their coins,
Right.
which led to inflation and instability.
It's like a warning from history.
It is, yeah.
Mess with sound money.
Uh-huh.
And your society might pay the price.
Exactly. And then,
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
we get to the gold standard and its rise and fall
Okay.
in the 19th and 20th centuries.
Right.
Ammous presents this alternative view
Uh-huh.
of the Great Depression,
Interesting.
arguing that government intervention actually made things worse.
Huh.
It's a reminder to always question the mainstream narrative.
Now, this is where Bitcoin enters the scene.
Okay.
The book argues that Bitcoin might be the hardest form of money yet.
Wow. Okay.
It uses this concept called the stock-to-flow ratio,
Stock to flow.
which basically measures how much of an asset already exists
Right.
compared to how much is produced each year.
I see.
The higher the ratio, the harder the money.
Hmm.
Think of it like real estate.
Wow.
Land is limited,
Right.
so it tends to hold its value.
Yeah.
Gold has a high stock-to-flow ratio too,
Okay.
which is why it's been a reliable store of value for millennia.
Makes sense.
But Bitcoin's stock-to-flow ratio is programmed to be even higher than gold.
Wow.
And that's because of Bitcoin's fixed supply.
Right.
There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins.
21
The
million.
book uses all these charts and data to illustrate this point,
Okay.
and it's pretty eye-opening to see just how different Bitcoin is
Uh-huh.
from inflationary fiat currencies.
It's not just about numbers, though.
Right.
The book connects sound money to this idea of time preference.
Okay.
When money holds its value,
Yeah.
people are more likely to save, invest for the future,
Right.
and think long term.
It's like that marshmallow experiment, right?
Oh, right.
The kids who could resist eating the marshmallow right away
Yeah.
ended up having better outcomes later in life.
I see.
It's all about delaying gratification
Right.
and making choices that benefit your future self.
Exactly. And the book argues that societies with sound money tend to have lower time preference. It points to the incredible technological advancements of the 19th century, a time of relative monetary stability as a possible outcome of this long-term thinking.
There's this really interesting comparison in the book
Okay.
between those grand cathedrals built centuries ago
Right.
and modern art.
I see.
Ammous uses it to spark a discussion about how unsound money might affect our culture, even the art we create.
It's a provocative idea,
It is.
but it makes you think.
It does.
If we're constantly worried about our money losing value, are we less likely to invest in things like art
Yeah.
that don't have an immediate financial return?
Right.
Does it shift our focus away from beauty, craftsmanship, and things that endure?
It's a really interesting question.
It is.
And I think it sets the stage for some of the deeper dives we'll be doing into the implications of Bitcoin for society.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to keep in mind that even if Bitcoin doesn't become this dominant force in the world,
Yeah.
its very existence challenges the status quo
Right.
and forces us to re-examine our assumptions about money and its role in our lives. You know, one of the things that really struck me about the Bitcoin standard
Yeah.
is how it connects sound money
Right.
to individual freedom.
Yeah.
It's not just an economic argument.
Right.
It's about the kind of society we want to live in.
It's like money is this hidden lever
Yeah.
that can shift the balance of power between individuals and governments.
Right.
Ammous makes this really compelling case
Okay.
that when governments control the money supply, they have this incredible power to shape society,
Yeah.
and not always for the better.
Think about it.
Yeah.
With fiat currency,
Right.
money that's not backed by anything tangible, governments can just print more money whenever they want.
Yeah.
Ammous argues that this is what fueled the massive expansion of government. We've seen in the 20th and 21st centuries.
Right.
Endless wars, unsustainable social programs,
Yeah.
and this ever-growing bureaucracy.
It's easy to see how that erodes individual freedom.
It is.
When your savings are constantly being devalued by inflation,
Right.
you're more reliant on the government to provide for you. You're stuck in the system where you're constantly struggling to keep up. And those in power benefit.
The book introduces this term, the bezel,
The bezel.
which basically refers to the wealth
Okay.
that gets transferred
Right.
to those who benefit from this system of unsound money.
I see.
It's like a hidden tax on everyone else.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
Right.
Who benefits from inflation?
Right.
Not the average person trying to save for their future.
Ammous points to groups like government agencies,
Okay.
banks,
Uh-huh.
and even certain sectors of academia as being part of this bezel.
Right.
They become bloated, inefficient,
Yeah.
and often out of touch with the needs of the people they're supposed to serve.
Makes sense.
It's a system that rewards conformity and obedience
Right.
rather than innovation and self-reliance.
And this is where Bitcoin comes in, right?
Yeah.
It offers this way to break free from that system, to
Right.
protect your wealth from inflation,
Right.
and regain some control over your own financial destiny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ammous presents Bitcoin as a tool for individual sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
Yeah, it's like this modern-day parallel to the printing press,
Hmm.
which disrupted the church's control over information back in the day.
Right.
Bitcoin have the potential to do the same thing
Okay.
with government control over money.
It's a pretty radical idea.
It is.
But the more I think about it, the more it makes sense.
Yeah.
We take our current monetary system for granted.
We do.
But what if there's a better way?
The book also delves into the psychological effects of sound money.
Okay.
Ammous argues that when money holds its value, people tend to have a lower time preference.
Time preference.
Yeah, meaning they're more patient,
Okay.
more likely to save and invest for the future,
Right.
and less likely to make impulsive decisions.
So it's not just about the numbers. It's about how our relationship with money shapes our behavior and our values as a society.
Exactly. The book contrasts this with the high-time preference culture we often see today, driven by instant gratification,
Right.
consumerism, and debt.
That makes me think of that section in the book where Ammous compares the grand cathedrals built centuries ago to a lot of modern art.
Interesting.
It's a stark contrast.
It is.
And he suggests that it might be linked to this shift in time preference.
It's a thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
When people are constantly worried about their money losing value, they might be less likely to invest in things like art that don't offer an immediate financial return.
I see.
It can shift our focus away from beauty, craftsmanship, and enduring value.
So how does all of this relate to Bitcoin? Does Ammous think it's the perfect solution to all of these problems?
Well, he acknowledges that Bitcoin faces some challenges. Like scalability. Yeah. Can the network handle millions or even billions of transactions as adoption grows?
And there's always the question of government regulation, right?
Oh, for sure.
Governments have a history of trying to control money.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be surprising to see them try to regulate or even ban Bitcoin.
Absolutely.
Oh.
But even with those challenges, Ammous believes that Bitcoin has the potential to disrupt the status quo and force governments to be more fiscally responsible.
So even if Bitcoin doesn't become this global reserve currency, it could still have a positive impact. By pushing for more transparency and accountability in the financial system.
Exactly. Now, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the blockchain itself. The Bitcoin standard explains how blockchain technology ensures Bitcoin's security through this decentralized and distributed ledger. Basically, every transaction is verified by multiple nodes, making it incredibly difficult to tamper with.
But the book also takes aim at all that hype about blockchain revolutionizing everything. Remember a few years ago when everyone was saying blockchain was going to transform industries from healthcare to supply chain management?
It was like blockchain was the solution to every problem.
It was.
But Ammous pours cold water on those claims. He highlights the economic limitations of blockchain, like redundancy. Yeah, is it really necessary for every node to have a copy of the entire ledger?
And there's that scalability problem again. Can a blockchain handle the volume of transactions needed for those massive real-world applications? The book also mentions the high cost of decentralization and the challenges of governance in a decentralized system.
It's a good reminder that blockchain, while a groundbreaking technology, is not a magic solution for every problem.
Ammous even suggests that blockchain, outside of its application in Bitcoin, might be a solution in search of a problem.
I like that analogy. You know, it's like someone invented this amazing hammer. And now they're trying to find things to hit with it. Even if those things don't need hammering.
So where does that leave us with Bitcoin? If it's not this universal solution, what is it?
Well, I think Ammous sees Bitcoin as this bold experiment. This challenge to the way we think about money. And its role in society. It's forced us to reconsider our assumptions and explore alternatives.
It's also sparked a lot of innovation.
Yeah, it has.
Since Bitcoin emerged, we've seen this explosion of new cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects. It's like a whole new world of possibilities has opened up.
Absolutely. And even if Bitcoin doesn't achieve global dominance, it's already had a significant impact. It's shown that decentralized digital currencies are possible. And it's pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible with technology.
It's also raised important questions about individual sovereignty and the power dynamics between governments and individuals.
The Bitcoin standard makes you realize that the monetary system we've inherited is not the only way to do things. There are alternatives. And it's up to us to explore those alternatives and decide what kind of future we want to create.
Now let's talk about some of the specific criticisms of Bitcoin that Ammous addresses in the book. One of the big ones you always hear is that Bitcoin is mostly used by criminals, you know, for buying illegal stuff on the dark web.
Yeah, like it's this shadowy underworld currency. But Ammous actually debunks that pretty effectively.
Okay.
He points out that Bitcoin's public ledger, the blockchain, makes it a terrible choice for criminals.
Really?
Yeah, because every transaction is recorded and traceable.
So it's not exactly anonymous.
Right.
Which is kind of ironic, right?
Yeah.
This supposedly secretive technology is actually super transparent.
Exactly. Ammous argues that good old-fashioned cash is still the preferred tool for illicit activities because it's truly untraceable.
Makes sense. Another criticism you hear a lot is about Bitcoin's energy consumption.
Okay.
All those computers mining Bitcoin must be using a ton of electricity.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And the book doesn't shy away from it.
Okay.
Ammous acknowledges that Bitcoin mining does require a significant amount of energy.
Right.
But he argues that we need to look at it in context.
So how does it compare to other industries?
Well, he compares it to things like gold mining, which also uses a lot of energy. Even the traditional banking system, with all its physical branches, data centers, and global transactions, consumes a massive amount of energy.
So it's not like Bitcoin is uniquely bad in terms of energy consumption.
Exactly.
It's more about weighing the costs and benefits.
Right. And Ammous believes that the benefits of a secure, decentralized, and censorship-resistant monetary system outweigh the energy costs.
Another concern I've heard is about Bitcoin's volatility.
Volatility, right?
The price goes up and down like crazy. I wouldn't want to lose all my savings overnight.
I think that's something that scares a lot of people away from Bitcoin.
It does.
But Ammous argues that this volatility is partly due to Bitcoin's relative youth. As it matures and adoption grows.
Right.
He expects those price swings to become less extreme.
So it's like the early days of the internet.
Yeah.
Things were a bit wild back then.
For sure.
But as more people got online and the technology improved, things stabilized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ammous sees a similar trajectory for Bitcoin.
Okay.
He believes that over time, as more people use it and understand it, it will become a more stable store of value.
Now let's talk about the big picture. What are some of the potential implications of widespread Bitcoin adoption?
Right.
The book paints some pretty interesting scenarios.
One of the most fascinating is the idea of Bitcoin becoming a global reserve currency.
A global reserve currency.
Yeah. Imagine a world where central banks hold Bitcoin.
Wow.
Instead of gold or U.S. dollars.
That would be a massive shift.
It would.
In the global financial system.
Yeah.
What would that even look like?
Well, it would certainly challenge the existing power structures.
Right.
Ammous argues that Bitcoin's decentralized nature makes it more resistant to manipulation by governments or central banks. It could also level the playing field, giving individuals and smaller countries more control over their finances.
So it wouldn't just be an economic shift. It could have geopolitical implications too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But of course, this is all speculative.
Right.
It remains to be seen whether Bitcoin can overcome the many challenges it faces.
Yeah.
And achieve that level of adoption.
Even if it doesn't reach that global reserve currency status, I think the Bitcoin standard makes a strong case that Bitcoin is a powerful force for change.
It's forcing us to rethink our assumptions about money, freedom, and the role of technology in shaping society.
It's also sparked this incredible wave of innovation.
It has.
Since Bitcoin emerged. We've seen this explosion of new cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects. It's like a whole new frontier has opened up.
And I think that's one of the most exciting things about this space.
It is.
We're still in the early stages.
Yeah.
And who knows what the future holds.
Right.
But the Bitcoin standard gives us a framework for understanding these developments. And for thinking critically about the potential implications.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to this theme of individual sovereignty that Ammous emphasizes throughout the book. It's something that really resonated with me.
Me too. It's about taking responsibility for your own financial well-being. And not relying on a system that can be manipulated against you.
It's about having options.
Exactly. Ammous argues that Bitcoin can be a tool for achieving greater financial sovereignty. It allows you to store and transfer value without having to go through third parties like banks or governments.
It puts you back in control.
It does.
Which is a powerful concept.
It is. And it's something to think about
Yeah.
as we navigate this increasingly complex and uncertain world.
Well, I think it's safe to say that the Bitcoin standard has given us plenty to ponder.
It has.
It's a deep dive into the history of money, the challenges of our current system, and the potential of Bitcoin to offer a different path.
It's a book that challenges conventional thinking.
It does.
And encourages us to question the assumptions we've made about money and finance.
And I think that's what makes it so valuable.
Yeah.
Whether you're a Bitcoin enthusiast or just curious about the future of money, this book is definitely worth a read.
So as you continue to explore the ideas presented in the Bitcoin standard, here's a final thought to consider.
Okay.
If Bitcoin were to succeed in becoming a global reserve currency, how might it reshape the world, both economically and geopolitically?
Yeah.
What opportunities and challenges might that present for you?
That's an excellent question. It's something to ponder as we watch this fascinating experiment unfold. Until next time, fellow deep divers, keep exploring.